The warrior type is one of the more populous and beloved types in Yu-Gi-Oh!, being used by multiple protagonists throughout several Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. Whether it's Arcana Knight Joker or number 39 Utopia, there's a warrior monster to fit anyone's personal flavor. For this list, however, we'll be focusing on the best warriors and warrior support cards from the classic era of Yu-Gi-Oh! Before synchro monsters made their debut. And starting off at number 10, we have the Marauding Captain, a level 3 Earth Warrior monster with 1200 attack. He was first released in 2003's Legacy of Darkness and was most recently reprinted in 2024's Quarter Century Bonanza. Marauding Captain's effect is that when it's on the field, your opponent can't attack warrior monsters except for him. Additionally, when it's normal summoned, you can special summon a level 4 lower monster from your hand. Marauding Captain can help preserve your more important warrior monsters by taking the hit for them, and an interesting interaction occurs when there are two captains on the field at once. Since both captains say you can only attack them, your opponent is unable to attack either captain or any other warrior monster you control. Konami was initially worried about this interaction being used to stall the game, and placed Marauding Captain on the semi-limited list in July of 2003, 1 month after its printing. Konami reversed this decision with the release of the October 2005 Forbidden list, probably because the interaction wasn't as strong as they feared. The other half of Marauding Captain's effect proved useful for swarming the field for future tribute summons, as your opponent would need to destroy both monsters in one turn to prevent that. In Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, Gurumo used Captain's effect to summon Shadow Tamer in his duel against Yamayugi, and Joey Wheeler used Captain to summon Battle Warrior in his duel against Veilon. Additionally, many students in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime appear to be fond of this card, with it being used in 6 different episodes. While Marauding Captain's special summon effect is good, it was actually a little better after the classic Yu-Gi-Oh! Era. Captain's effect could be used to summon a tuner monster from hand to make a level 4 to 7 synchro monster. Additionally, he could summon another level 3 to go into a rank 3 XC summon. As nice as those capabilities are, this list is about classic Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is why he's so low on our list. The 9th spot on our list goes to Zambra the Dark, a level 4 Dark Warrior monster with 2100 attack. Though with a name like that, you'd think he'd be a zombie. He was first released in 2003's Labyrinth of Nightmare, and in 2023 when reprinted in June's Lost Art promotion. Zambra the Dark can't attack an opponent directly, and when it destroys a monster by battle, it loses 200 attack permanently. It was common in early Yu-Gi-Oh! To put a negative effect on a level 4 monster with more than 1900 attack, with Zambra's colleagues Dark Elf, Goblin Attack Force, and Sousa Soldier having their own unique drawbacks. Zambra's drawbacks proved to be the easiest to work with, since its 2100 attack was able to destroy pretty much any other normal summoned monster. Even after he destroys 2 monsters, he would still have a respectable 1700 attack. And it doesn't even have to stay that way. If you can flip Zambra face down using a card like Book of Moon and then flip it back up, it will start back at 2100 attack again. Another way to avoid Zambra's negative effect is to use them alongside Skill Drain, which just negates them outright. If Zambra is destroyed, it's not a tragedy as it's Dark Attribute, which can be used to fuel to summon a monster like Chaos Sorcerer and Blackluster Soldier and Void the Beginning, as both need to banish a light and dark monster from your grave to summon themselves. Zambra the Dark is a strong monster, but he doesn't have much going for him besides that, which is why it isn't higher on this list. In the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga, it's based on an in-universe comic character, Zombire, who seems to be based on Spawn. He surprisingly never had an anime appearance, unlike the next card on our list. And at number 8, we have the fan favorite, Gearfried the Iron Knight. It's a level 4 Earth Warrior monster with 1800 attack and 1600 defense, and was first released in 2002's Pharaoh's Servant. Gearfried the Iron Knight's effect is that if either player equips him with an equipped card, destroy that equipped card. Initially, this seems like a niche protection against your opponent's Snatch Steal, but that completely changes when you equip Gearfried with cards that want to be destroyed for a benefit. Some great examples of this are Black Pendant, which burns your opponent for 500 life points when destroyed, Blast with Chain, which turns into a targeted card destruction when it's destroyed by a card effect, and Smoke Grenade to the Thief, which when destroyed by a card effect allows you to look at your opponent's hand and discard one of their cards. All of these effects are great, and yet they pale in comparison to what Gearfried the Iron Knight can do with Butterfly Dagger Elma, which has the effect that when it's destroyed and sent to the graveyard while equipped to a monster, it returns to the hand. This means the dagger will continuously recycle itself when it's equipped to Gearfried. While this interaction does nothing on its own, when combined with other cards, it can have devastating results. Comboed with Royal Magical Library, a monster that gets a spell counter every time you play a spell, and you can then remove 3 to draw a card, you'll be able to draw your entire deck, which could easily lead to a victory via Exodia the Forbidden One. Other options include Magical Marionette, which uses the spell counters it generates to destroy monsters on the field, Spell Absorption, which gains you 500 life points every time you play a spell, and if you can get Fire Princes on field at the same time, you can burn your opponent for 500 life points every time you gain life. All of these interactions led to Butterfly Dagger Elma getting limited in February of 2004 and later banned in April of 2005, where it has stayed since. In the anime, Gearfried the Iron Knight was one of Joey Wheeler's most reliable monsters. Although Joey never used Gearfried's effect to the extent that TCG players have, it did come in clutch during his fight against Weevil Underwood, who was using the effect of Reckless Parasite to equip Parasite tokens to Joey's monsters, turning them into insects. Gearfried the Iron Knight effect is game-breaking when the stars align, but you still need other cards to make them work. However, the next monster on our list is just great on its own. And at number 7, we have the leader of the Dark Scorpions himself, Don Zalug. He's a level 4 Dark Warrior with 1400 attack and 1500 defense, and was first released in 2003's Pharaonic Guardian. When Don Zalug inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can either discard one random card from their hand, or send the top 2 cards of their deck to the graveyard. Being able to discard cards from your opponent's hand is extremely powerful, with an entire deck being dedicated to doing so in GOAT format. In Hand Assault, Don Zalug is the star of the deck, and is played at 3 copies alongside Spirit Reaper and Drop Off. Despite older Yu-Gi-Oh's access to powerful cards like Pot of Greed and Graceful Charity, the game hadn't yet evolved the consistent card advantage engines we use today, and running out of cards in hand wasn't uncommon. Don Zalug's effect is simpler than most other hand rip effects available. Perhaps only second place Delinquent Duo in the effectiveness for GOAT format. While Don's discard effect is usually the one chosen between the 2 options, the 2-card mill is no slouch. When combined with Necro Valley, the cards sent by Don Zalug are effectively stuck there, unless those cards can leave the graveyard from their own effects, hampering Chaos decks as well as cards like Magician of Faith. In Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Don Zalug was more than just a card, he was a character. In the episode The Dark Scorpions, the spirit of the card, Don Zalug, took physical form and disguised himself as an imitation of Sherlock Holmes with a Christopher Walken accent. Isn't Yu-Gi-Oh! Great? Don Zalug was the 4th Shadow Rider, and along with the other Dark Scorpions, was attempting to open the Spirit Gate to retrieve the Sacred Beast cards, failing to do so after losing his duel with Chaz Princeton. And at number 6 in our list, we have Mystic Swordsman Level 2, a level 2 Earth Warrior monster with 900 attack. It was first released in 2004 Soul of the Duelist as a rare and ultimate rare, this set being the first to introduce both level monsters and the ultimate rarity. Mystic Swordsman Level 2's effect is that if it attacks a face-down monster, destroy that monster at the start of the damage step. During the end phase, if Swordsman did destroy a monster by battle this turn and is still face up, you can send it to the graveyard to special summon Mystic Swordsman Level 4 from your deck. Flip monsters were heavily used during the classic Yu-Gi-Oh! Era, with many of them having powerful effects. Even with many decks playing Nobleman of Crossout, there was still a need for more anti-flip cards. Mystic Swordsman Level 2 is perfect for this, because his effect destroys the monster at the start of the damage step before they flip to activate their effects. Without their defense stat coming into play, it makes Swordsman ideal for taking out all those face-down monsters. In fact, this card is commonly used alongside Book of Moon to take out bosses. Mystic Swordsman Level 2's second effect to level up to a level 4 version of himself is rarely actually used, mostly because a level 4 version can't be normal summoned, making it a Garnet. Mystic Swordsman Level 2 might be the ultimate answer to flip monsters, but his 900 attack leaves something to be desired. It's fairly easy to run over him with most normal summons from classic Yu-Gi-Oh!, a problem our next monster attempts to address. And slicing to the number 5 spot is Blade Knight, a level 4 light warrior monster with 1600 attack and 1000 defense. It was first released as one of the options for the 2004 collectible tins, and was most recently reprinted in the 25th anniversary Ultimate Kaiba set. Blade Knight's effect is that it gains 400 attack while you have 1 or less cards in your hand. While you control no other monsters, if Blade Knight destroys a monster by battle, its flip effects are negated. While Blade Knight has more conditions to its effects than Mystic Swordsman Level 2, it also has more staying power. 1600 is a very respectable attack stat line for the time, and the potential of bumping up to 2000 in a pinch helps a lot. But while most flip effect monsters have low defense stats, there's one notable exception. Gravekeeper Spy has 2000 defense and the ability to summon another copy of itself with its flip effect, making it one of the best ways to flood the field for tribute summoning powerful monsters like Dark Magician of Chaos and Jinzo. As a result, many players will run a copy of 2 Mystic Swordsman Level 2 alongside a full set of Blade Knights. Outside of that scenario though, Blade Knight is often preferred, with some benefits being its light attribute, which can be used in Chaos variants of warrior decks, and its high attack allowed to be used in King Tiger Wangu decks. In Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, Blade Knight was used heavily by Seto Kaiba in the Battle City Finals, seen play in the Battle Royale, as well as in his matches against Yami Yugi and Joey Wheeler. And at number 4 on our list, we have the big bad Blackluster Soldier Envoy of the Beginning. It's a level 8 light warrior monster with 3000 attack and 2500 defense, and first released in 2004's Invasion of Chaos. Blackluster Soldier Envoy of the Beginning can't be normal summoned or set. Instead, he must be special summoned from your hand by banishing 1 light and 1 dark monster from your graveyard. On the field, he can activate one of 2 effects once per turn. The first effect is to target 1 monster on the field, then banish it, with the caveat that Blackluster Soldier can't attack the turn the effect is activated. The second effect is that if Blackluster Soldier destroys a monster by battle, it can make a second attack in a row. For a lot of GOAT format decks, Blackluster Soldier is the boss monster. While he doesn't specifically do much for warrior-themed decks, many warrior decks feature an abundance of light and dark monsters. Although, if your warrior deck is running the Warrior Returning Alive, it could be used to return a Blackluster Soldier from the graveyard to your hand. In the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Dimitri steals Yugi's deck while it's in the Exhibition Tour, and summons Blackluster Soldier Envoy of the Beginning against Jade and Yuki, who is attempting to get the deck back. Dimitri banishes Karibo and Watapon for Blackluster Soldier's summoning condition, and uses the effect to attack twice in a row, although the second attack is negated by Hero Spirit. Blackluster Soldier would be banned in October 2005, where it would stay banned until September 2011, well past the classic era of Yu-Gi-Oh! While it was probably the strongest warrior at the time, there were more useful warrior cards available. Better hide your wallets because at number 3, we have the Exile Force, and they'll most certainly snatch it from you. This roving ragtag group of ruffians is a level 4 Earth Warrior monster with 1000 attack and defense, and was first released in 2004's Legacy of Darkness. Exile Force's effect is that you contribute it to target 1 monster on the field, then destroy it. Have a powerful monster on the field? Well, you don't anymore. Being able to pop any monster that doesn't have immunity to card destruction effects is obviously a good thing. However, what if I told you that Exile Force is even more busted than you think? You see, in the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh!, there was Ignition Effect priority, meaning you can activate your Ignition effects during your summon response window. Now, I know that can be a bit confusing, so I'll break it down for you. Let's say my opponent controls a monster and a face-down trap hole. Then I summon Exile Force. I can activate Exile Force's effect on summon because I'm the turn player and I have priority, meaning it gets tributed for cost before it can get destroyed by my opponent's trap hole that would have chained in response to Exile Force's summoning. Obviously, that's not how it works in the modern game, but that change didn't take place until April of 2012, with the introduction of Master Rule 2. With the power to take down most monsters in the game, Exile Force found its way on the limited list in July of 2003, where it stayed until September 2006. Being pushed up to semi-limited. Force would eventually become unlimited in March of 2007, as the game was quickly leaving it behind. In Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's, Yusei Fudo uses Exiled Force in his fight against Mr. Armstrong. Yusei attacks and destroys one of Armstrong's Iron Chain snakes using Exiled Force and then tributes it to destroy Armstrong's Iron Chain Repairman. And coming in at second place at number 2, we have DD Warrior Lady, a level 4 light warrior monster with 1500 attack and 1600 defense. She was first released in 2003's Dark Crisis and has been reprinted 15 more times since then. DD Warrior Lady's effect is that when she battles an opponent's monster, after damage calculation, you can banish that monster and then banish her. This works even if neither monster would be destroyed by the battle, and regardless of whether she is attacking or defending. While Exiled Force destroys a monster, DD Warrior Lady banishes a monster, which doesn't seem like a big difference if you haven't played GOAT format before. 2 extremely common cards used in most GOAT format decks are Premature Burial and Call the Haunted, both of which can revive a monster from the graveyard. If you banish your opponent's monster, you won't be able to revive them, permanently removing them from the game in most situations. While there are 2 cards that can fetch banished monsters back, Dimensional Fusion and Return from the Different Dimension, those cards are usually only played in decks that plan to banish a lot of their own monsters. Funnily enough, both of those cards feature DD Warrior Lady on them, as she has pretty much become the icon of the Different Dimension. But back to the point. Banishing hurts a lot more than destroying does in classic Yu-Gi-Oh!, making it a staple in any deck with a space for it. With such a powerful effect in universal use, DD Warrior Lady was slapped on the limited list in April 2005, where she stayed until September 2009. DD Warrior Lady is clearly a champion in her own right, but this top spot on the list should be obvious to anyone who's ever played a warrior deck. It's the kind of card that other monster types wish they had in the classic era. However, before we move on to the final entry, let's go over some honorable mentions. Frontier Wise Man is a level 3 Earth Spellcaster monster with 1600 attack and 800 defense that was first released in 2003's Legacy of Darkness. He has the effect that negates any spell cards that target warrior monsters you control, then it destroys the spell card. This effect works even if the card targets multiple warriors at once, and works on any equipped spells, including your own. Wiseman is really good at protecting your warriors, and gets even better when combined with DNA Surgery, which can change all your monsters into warriors. Sasuke Samurai is a level 2 Wind Warrior with 500 attack and 800 defense that was first released in 2003's Pharaonic Guardian. It has the same effect as Mystic Swordsman level 2, bar the level up mechanic, and acts as a slightly worse version of it in most cases. Sasuke Samurai is useful for wind attribute decks, however, which often utilize Flying Kamakiri number 1, the wind attribute battle search to flow directly into Samurai. The Warrior Returning Alive is a normal spell card, which was first released in 2004's Legacy of Darkness, and can target one warrior in your graveyard and return it to your hand. While this playground favorite card isn't a bad card, it's much better to simply use cards like Premature Burial and Call of the Haunted to summon that monster back from the graveyard, preserving your normal summon. Lastly, Freed the Matchless General is a level 5 Earth Warrior monster with 2300 attack and 1700 defense, and was also released in Legacy of Darkness. His first effect is to negate any spells that target him on the field when it resolves, and then destroy that spell. His second effect is that during the draw phase, instead of drawing a card, you can add a level 4 or lower warrior monster from your deck to your hand. While this effect is good, it takes a tribute summon to summon Freed just to do something the top card on our list could do for free. And if it wasn't obvious, Reinforcements of the Army is our number 1. This normal spell was first released in 2004's Legacy of Darkness and has been reprinted over 30 times. Reinforcement of the Army's effect is that you can add one level 4 or lower warrior monster from your deck to your hand. This effect isn't once per turn, so if you draw multiple, they aren't bricks. Reinforcement can search for most of the monsters on this list, and while some of these monsters were limited at the time, Reinforcements was semi-limited, meaning that it can effectively be a toolbox for your warrior deck. Reinforcement of the Army quickly became a staple in all warrior decks, with its long name quickly being shortened to Rhoda by the player base. While the search is the obvious benefit of using Rhoda, the ability to selectively thin your deck makes it act more like an efficient upstart goblin. If you can Rhoda a card out first, you can then guarantee you don't draw that card when you use Pot of Greed or Graceful Charity. The impact Rhoda has had on classic Yu-Gi-Oh! Can still be felt today in its limited status, and in how the term Rhoda became Yu-Gi-Oh! Slang for any card that searches another card from your deck. Many new archetypes have a version of Rhoda built in engine, so it's easily understandable why the OG is the fact where if you have 4 or more cards currently banished and have no cards in your graveyard, you get to draw 2 cards. So just like with Dimension Distortion, this card requires you to have nothing in your graveyard in order to activate it. However, it has an even stricter cost of having at least 4 cards banished. And like I said before, banishing 1 card is kind of difficult already, and keeping a clear graveyard in the process of doing that is even harder. So getting 4 cards banished without a graveyard is an astronomical task. It's so hard, you would literally have to build your deck around trying to resolve this card. This is how badly designed these no graveyard cards are, where the only one that's worth its effect in the set would probably be DD Borderline, and even that card only requires no spell cards in your graveyard instead of nothing in your grave. Even if technically drawing 2 cards is an incredibly good effect, the condition for this is just too tough, that it definitely never saw any competitive play. Which is really funny because the conditions don't seem like it should be that hard. It doesn't require any specific cards for the condition, just any 4 banished cards of any type, and just no graveyard. But there's a reason they stopped printing cards that don't require a graveyard after this set, because the few cards they did print that required no graveyard to be used in this way just never saw any play, because the requirement alone was already too difficult to accomplish. And it just didn't seem like it would be a big deal in the first place when they printed these cards, especially in a set all about banishing cards from the graveyard. And at number 3, we have Insect Princess. This is a level 6 monster with 1900 attack, which has the effect where all of your opponent's insect monsters are changed to attack position, and if this card destroys an insect by battle, it gains 500 attack permanently. So basically, it's an anti-insect card, while also being an insect monster. Now, insect decks were not super prevalent back in the day, so the way they intended you to use this card was as a combo piece with Parasite, a card so infamously bad that the only way to make it playable was to have a skill in Duel Links that literally just cheated it into your opponent's deck before the duel started. And the thing is, Insect Princess did exist in the game with that skill, and was not used in Parasite decks and Duel Links, because even in decks that it was specifically designed for, the effect was just not good enough. It only has 1900 attack for 1 tribute, which is pretty low. The only reason Air Knight Parshat saw competitive play back in the day, despite having the same stats for 1 tribute, is because it drew a card if it successfully dealt battle damage, so you can go +1 in card advantage. And with its ability to deal piercing damage, you very often got to draw one card because of all the flip monsters being played. Whereas Insect Princess will not give you any kind of card advantage, but most likely lose you advantage trying to bring it out, and then have an incredibly mediocre floodgate that might not even hamper your opponent at all. And its effect is not even that good, despite requiring specific monsters to be destroyed by battle. If instead you got to draw a card just like Air Knight Parshath, it would still be bad, the Great Moth. This level 8 Earth Insect from 2002's Metal Raider set has 2600 attack and 2500 defense, and was one of the first ace monsters faced by Yugi in the Duel Monsters anime. During his first match of the Duelist Kingdom tournament, Yugi challenged the regional champion Weevil Underwood to a duel. Before the start of the match, Weevil baited Yugi into giving chase until both duelists were deep in the forest, which, per the special rules of Duelist Kingdom, gave all of Weevil's bug monsters a field power bonus. After enveloping his Larva Moth in Cocoon of Evolution, Weevil spent a lot of time taunting Yugi about the strength of the creature that would emerge. And yes, the correct way to use Cocoon of Evolution is with Petite Moth and not Larva Moth. You'd think Weevil would know better, but then after considering his win-loss record, maybe this misplay kinda makes sense. Anyway, Weevil revealed the Great Moth in episode 5 after Yugi managed to destroy Cocoon of Evolution with Gaia the Fierce Knight. In the anime, Great Moth had the ability to weaken non-insect monsters with the choking dust that spun off its wings. This would prove not enough to overcome Yugi's summoned skull after the empowerment of Makyu, the Magical Mist, and Weevil lost the duel. While the TCG adaptation of Great Moth has no effect outside of one of the harshest summoning conditions in the entire game, the spirit of Great Moth's impact in the anime would be preserved by another line of evolving bugs, the Ultimate Insects, which decrease the attack of an enemy monster by more and more with each level up. But back to Great Moth. It's landing all the way at the number 2, and let's talk about why. While 2600 isn't an embarrassing attack stat to hit the field with, the unfortunate reality of Great Moth is that it's just not going to hit the field. First, you'll need Petite Moth, a level 1 vanilla insect, and then you'll need a Cocoon of Evolution to equip it with. Then, what you need is time, and a lot of it, because Great Moth can only be special summoned from your hand by tributing a Cocoon of Evolution equipped Petite Moth during your 4th turn having it on the field. While most games of Yu-Gi-Oh! Are basically decided before turn 4, this is a really bleak way to summon. Also, if you draw Great Moth on your 5th turn, hosting the world's most inconvenient Poopa, you're out of luck. The closing of the 4th turn is also the closing of your window to summon Great Moth. But anime fans who've studied Weevil Underwood's frankly tragic career might ask, isn't there a stronger no-effect moth that's arguably worse? Actually, no. Let's talk about Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth anyway. It's like Great Moth, except instead of waiting 4 turns, with Petite Moth and Cocoon of Evolution, you have to wait 6. To compensate for the extra weight, Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth has 900 more attack than the neutrally regular Great Moth, boasting a respectable stat line of 3500 attack and 3000 defense. Unlike Great Moth, Perfectly Ultimate can be summoned by tributing your Petite Moth on turn 6 or later. It doesn't lock itself out of hitting the field if you can't draw it in time, which is nice. But of course, no one is summoning either of these cards through Cocoon of Evolution anyway, making this positive modification mostly irrelevant. If you want to use the moths in the modern game, you're much better off just using Cocoon of Ultra Evolution, a quick play spell which can tribute an insect monster with equipment to hatch an insect from your deck while ignoring its summoning conditions. Since this effectively gives Great Moth and Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth the same practical summoning conditions, this list ranks Great Moth worse. Reptiles have long been one of the most overlooked types in Yu-Gi-Oh! Outside of a few archetypes, there are only a scant few reptile cards. Thankfully, for the purpose of this list, many of them are bad. Starting off this list at number 10 is the first card in a long series of lore that revolves around a green reptilian creature that for now is just Baby Gigabyte. This level 1 water reptile has 350 attack and 300 defense, and debuted in the 2004 set Ancient Sanctuary. Gigabyte is a normal monster and has no effect, but does carry some suggestive flavor text. He has a tranquil soul, but carries a destiny that one day his heart shall be tainted by evil. Sadly, this prophecy would prove true. Despite the positive influence of Gigabyte's pal Area the Water Charmer, Gigabyte would in time go his own way, beginning his adventure by working together with less powerful creatures as shown in Law of the Normal. Gigabyte's thirst for more tended to get him in all kinds of trouble. His ascension to a stronger creature would occur when he encountered the bizarre Triangle power, which led to his evolution to Gigabyte, expanding his influence over Area. In time, the bond between Charmers and their familiars would be broken, leading to Gigabyte and his brethren to go their own way. Still somewhat young and undefined, Gaga Gigo ventured across the world, having a little fun here and there, like when he went ice skating, but also running into trouble, like when he and Marauding Captain teamed up against Blazing Inpachi and Invader of Darkness. It's unclear how their alliance was formed, but Blazing Inpachi was a random force of destruction at the time, so it's totally possible that things were a little icy between Gaga Gigo and the Captain before the tension was melted and replaced by a violent forest fire. This would prove to be a rough fight, and both Marauding Captain and Gaga Gigo taking big hits to save their partner, as seen in My Body as a Shield and Spirit Barrier. The exact outcome of this exchange is a bit unclear, but the Marauding Captain and Gaga Gigo would go their separate ways, and eventually Gaga Gigo wound up in a subspace battle against Freed the Brave Wanderer. Perhaps this fight occurred because of Free's instinctive hostility towards the lizard monsters with high attack, or maybe the wounds inflicted on Gaga Gigo by Invader of Darkness harmed more than just his body. Regardless of how it began, this fight would eventually end in a draw when the DD borderline prevented both parties from engaging further. In time, Gaga Gigo would find his way back to his friend the Marauding Captain and his enemy, now promoted to Freed the Matchless General. Unsure of his place in the world and maybe a little scared of the strength of Freed and the judgment of Marauding Captain, Gaga Gigo hid in the nearby forest, sadly watching the army break camp and feast on a meal prepared by Marmiting Captain. In low spirits, Gaga Gigo would hit rock bottom, as shown in the continuous spell Stumbling, but this would not prove to be the end, as he would wager his soul in a bargain to gain greater strength at the altar for tribute. Here, the Dark World mad scientist Kozaki would discover him and bring him back to the level conversion lab, where after much heinous experimentation, Gaga Gigo would become the cyborg creature Giga Gaga Gigo. Although Gaga Gigo's goal was to fight tremendous evil, Kozaki did not have such good intentions, and the resulting robotically enhanced Giga Gaga Gigo lost both his heart and his redemption, according to the flavor text. After taking the compulsory evacuation device to escape the Dark World and Kozaki's clutches, Giga Gaga Gigo was able to re-enter the world by traversing the Monster Gate. Here he would eventually encounter Freed the Matchless General and the two would fight, with Freed's draining shield blocking much of Giga Gaga Gigo's empowered blows. Eventually, Giga Gaga Gigo's rampage would blow back on himself, depicted in Death's counterblow. This shock of energy would prove destabilizing and result in his dark powers accelerating and mutating his body into the behemoth Go Giga Gaga Gigo. Bearing the ominous flavor text, his soul long since collapsed, his body recklessly continues onward, driven by a lust for more power. He no longer resembles his former self. But ultimately, the shattered pieces of Gaga Gigo's soul would prove stronger than the mutant powers of the Go Giga form. In Memory of an Adversary, we can see Marauding Captain repeating the gesture he used to save Gaga Gigo so long ago in My Body as a Shield. But this time, the Captain was protecting Freed from the threat of Go Giga Gaga Gigo. And this is the point of the highest tension in the saga of Gigabyte. Will he vanquish both his former enemy and ally? Not to be a tease, but that's a question you're going to have to wait for a little bit later on in this video to find out the answer of, because we're not done with Gigabyte. But we are done with him for now. There are plenty of other normal reptiles with bad stats, and this spot could have easily gone to Serpent Marauder or Drooling Lizard, especially since level 1s do enjoy some specific support like Where Art Thou and 1-for-1. But Gigabyte's stats are worse, and more importantly, his lore is cooler. Still, because it's more fun to talk about reptiles with bad effects than a whole list of low-level normal monsters, we're giving Gigabyte both the number 10 spot and the option of the Gaga Gigo saga. Like a Gigabyte, Gaga Gigo, Giga Gaga Gigo, and Go Giga Gaga Gigo before him, Gaga Gigo the Risen does not have an effect. But unlike most of those other cards, he's not easy to bring out. Gigabyte's not going to be making big swings at your opponent's life points anytime soon, but at least you can quickly summon or set him. Gaga Gigo the Risen requires an overlay of 3 level 4 monsters, which is a very steep cost. Typically, monsters that use 3 or more overlay materials have powerful and versatile effects, like Evil Swarm Ouroboros or Stellar Knight Deltaros. But you go, Gaga Gigo, give us nothing. The only other Xyz monster with no effect is Gem Knight Pearl, a fact that doesn't make a Gaga Gigo the Risen any better, especially since Gem Knight Pearl only requires an overlay of 2 level 4s. But it is kind of interesting, and it's a good thing Gaga Gigo the Risen is interesting, because otherwise there'd be almost nothing to say about it. Maybe Gaga Gigo the Risen's redemption is that he no longer requires you to factor another high-level normal monster into your deck list, but that's still not saying much. In the end, it is nice that after 3 years as Go Giga Gaga Gigo, Konami saw fit to give a happier ending to this icon. And at number 3, we have Fairy Guardian. This is a monster which has the effect where you contribute in order to return a spell card from your graveyard to the bottom of your deck, as long as it was sent to the graveyard this turn by your opponent. So, at least Return of the Doomed allowed you to recur the advantage directly to your hand. Fairy Guardian kind of has the same problem of going -1 for the effect, but it's not even a useful effect. If you could just return any spell card from your graveyard to the bottom of the deck with its effect without any other kind of conditions, it would still be bad. The fact that it requires a target that was sent to the graveyard by your opponent makes it laughably bad. It's basically a vanilla monster with how useless that effect is, and it doesn't even have good stats with 1000 attack and defense on a level 3 monster. Now, there are 3 other cards which were created in the same vein and released in the sets, but at least those ones had better stats. The Forgiving Maiden can tribute itself in order to return a monster destroyed by battle to your hand, similar to Return of the Doom. But it at least had 2000 defense, which was a useful stat line for a level 4 or lower monster. Lady Panther can tribute itself in order to return a destroyed monster by battle to the top of your deck, and Crimson Sentry can tribute itself to return a monster destroyed by battle to the bottom of your deck, and both of these cards were equally terrible, as they didn't even return the card to your hand like the Forgiving Maiden did, nor did they have noteworthy stats. Although even they are better than Fairy Guardian, because activating the effects is actually more likely to happen, because the trigger of a monster being destroyed by battle is much easier to set up and see in a common game than the trigger of your opponent sending one of your spell cards to the graveyard during your turn. Because to make matters worse, all of these effects are spell speed 1 and thus only usable during your turn. So, how could anything be worse than Fairy Guardian? Well, at least it can be used as a vanilla beatstick, without losing you a whole bunch of advantage. And at number 2, we have a dual spot with Super Robo Lady and Super Robo Yaru. These are 2 level 6 fusion monsters with only 1200 attack, and they both have the effect where they can return themselves from the field to the extra deck in order to special summon the other one from the extra deck, but not on the same turn that they were special summoned to the field. And then they both have different kinds of effects when attacking, where Super Robo Lady gains 1000 attack if it's attacking directly, and Super Robo Yaru gains 1000 attack if it's battling a monster. And of those 2 effects, Super Robo Yaru does have a more useful one, because it means it can actually beat over something like a Gemini Elf. Now, what's bad about these cards is that they're early game fusion monsters and have 2 incredibly weak vanilla monsters as their materials. And also, when they were released, there wasn't really fusion support to help get these cards in your hand in order to actually perform the fusion summons in the first place. You basically had to rely on hard drawing the 2 materials and a polymerization, and going -2 in card advantage in order to bring out one of the 2 fusion monsters. And for going -2 in order to bring out one of these 2 cards, they definitely did not do enough on the field to really justify the amount of investment required to bring them out. Although, to be fair, neither did most of the early game fusions. And also, their ability to tag out with each other was not even good because you couldn't actually do it until your next turn, and it was a spell speed 1 effect. So they were both level 6 fusion monsters that were technically targets for Fusion Weapon, which I know some people in the comments might mention as a benefit of it, which would provide a 1500 attack boost. Although that card wasn't released until a year later, and wasn't a better attack boost than just United We Stand or Mage Power, which was available at their release. They could also be brought out with Power Bond to double their attack since they're machine-type fusion monsters, but that doesn't really solve the problem of them still not having the consistency tools needed in order to pull that off without going -2 in card advantage. However, 5 years after they were released, they did introduce a specific support card for them called Cybernetic Zone, which on a quick play spell card, allowed you to banish a machine-type fusion monster until the end of the turn, and when it returned to the field it had its attack doubled, but then it was destroyed during the next standby phase. And since these 2 cards could tag out with each other, you could use Cybernetic Zone to protect them during your opponent's turn, get a 2400 attack monster with their benefits during your turn, and then tag it out during the main phase 2 in order to prevent them from being destroyed. And even this combo was not worth the effort, but at least there was a useful application of their ability to tag out with each other now. And at least they could somewhat be useful, despite the massive amount of card disadvantage you incurred. And at number 1, we have Chosen One. This is a spell card which requires you to select 3 cards in your hand, 1 monster and 2 non-monster cards, then your opponent randomly chooses one of the 3 cards. If the chosen card is a monster card, it's special summoned and you send the other 2 cards to the graveyard. If it's not the monster, you instead send all the cards to the graveyard. So basically, you have a chance to go -3 in order to special summon a monster from your hand. Or you have a 2/3 chance of going -4 for no effect. If this card could just special summon that monster from your hand with the same cost, without the random chance, it would still be terrible. The fact that you have a less than 50% chance of actually being able to summon the monster just makes it that much worse. In fact, this card is so bad, it's probably one of the worst cards ever made, which probably wasn't specifically designed to be bad, like Cold Feet or Jar of Generosity. It's really saying something when a card is worse than Cold Feet, a card that was made as a joke in order to